Hey everyone, welcome back to Astrology Beans. This video is going to look at Sheikh Hamdan Al Maktoum's astrological aspects, specifically his conjunct aspects. And the reason why his conjunct aspects get an entire video is because he has 10 of them. He has so many of them. So I wanted to just focus on those for this video. So before I begin, I wanted to mention this. I know I should have mentioned this in my first video, but what I'm using is I'm using the Western Tropical Astrological chart, not the Vedic astrology. I have respect for both. I was just taught Western astrology, so that's why I'm using the Western astrological chart versus Vedic. With Vedic, you're going to notice that some of the signs are a sign back from Western. So his Mars may be in Capricorn for Western, but in Vedic astrology it's in Sagittarius. So you will see differences in that aspect. So I just wanted to point that out. Like I said, I should have mentioned that in the first video, but if there's some confusion, if you look up his chart and you're into Vedic astrology, you're like, hey, that's not what you said, that's why. So I want to begin by first kind of mentioning what an aspect is. An aspect is, it happens when a planet is a certain number of degrees away from another planet or point in your chart. And as I mentioned before, he has 10 conjunct aspects, and the reason why is because he has five planets that are all in Scorpio. And this is just without his birth time. If I had his birth time, there may be more aspects. I don't know. But a conjunct aspect is when two planets in the same sign, 0 degrees apart, are blending together. So that's why he has so many, because these two planets are blending together. So I want to begin by saying that his aspects lined up perfectly for him to be in the position that he is in life. And by that I mean world famous, well-known, wealthy, good businessman, smart with business, smart with money, very humble, a great communicator. The list goes on. He was born to play the role he's in. So some famous people can't handle being famous and they just dive bomb. He was born to do this. Like, this was meant for him. It's in his chart. You can just see it. And once I start reading these, you'll start seeing how, from the little breadcrumbs that he's shown us, you'll be like, yeah, that's a good point. So first I want to begin with Venus conjunct Jupiter. And with Venus conjunct Jupiter individuals, they're very kind, caring, and they're hopeless romantics. They carry large ideas for what lovers should be like and what should entail. So think of romantic movies. That's kind of what they play in their head. Like, that's how romance should be, is like a romance movie. They make commitments and they are taken very seriously. They can be somewhat lazy or unmotivated, as luxurious living is what is desired most for them, but I don't see that with him. He's not lazy at all. They must caution themselves for overspending or carelessly handling their finances. And again, I don't see that with him. He comes across very humble with his money. I've heard someone say that you can tell a wealthy person versus a not so wealthy person by the way they show their spending. a wealthy person is going to be humble with what they have. Like their social media isn't filled with watches, handbags, cars, their homes, their exotic. I mean, he shows off his exotic travel, but that's a passion for him. That's not showing off, hey, I've got money, I'm going here. It's, hey, I'm traveling the world. I love this place. It's beautiful. Come check it out. I kind of get the feeling that that's what it is for him versus the not so wealthy person that's probably putting their watches, cars, and stuff on credit cards versus someone who's more humble with their money. And I get that from him. He's more humble. He's not a show off. He doesn't want to show off his wealth. He was born into it and he's handling it very maturely. That's just my opinion. Moving on to Sun conjunct Mercury. These individuals are very powerful and prideful of their thoughts and ideas. They are animated speakers, and often people find themselves wanting to hear more about what they have to say. This is a typically good thing, as these people may not always want to listen to what others are saying. So kind of think of a topic that you find extremely boring. For me, it's math. Hate math, cannot stand math. Even though I'm into astrology and astronomy where it's highly loaded with math, I hate it. I hate the topic. I was so bored in statistics. But if he was up in the classroom talking about statistics, I would have been front and center, taking notes and fully captivated by what he was talking about statistics. Who finds that entertaining or captivating? He would make it that way. So that's what Sun conjunct Mercury people are capable of doing. Now, Sun conjunct Venus, these are natural people pleasers and they're charismatic charmers. They're capable of listening sincerely to others and giving them the impression of genuine understanding. They're lovers, not fighters. People are attracted to them because they're genuinely lovely nature. They're artistic and creative. Their talent can shine through with music, dance, art, fashion, and poetry. Beauty comes not only on the outside but the inside as well, with their compassionate, sympathetic, and strong belief in unity and unconditional love. They do appreciate beauty, so they tend to have a personal appearance, and their home is very beautiful. And their loved ones, they want them to kind of keep up with their beauty as well. Not all of them, but some Sun conjunct Venuses are that way. They appreciate the importance of good food, exercise, and a healthy diet. I definitely see that about him. Their desire for peace and harmony together with their soft nature means that at times they can compromise too much in order to keep the peace. So they may give more than they're willing to just to keep the peace. And they also have a tendency to sugarcoat unpleasant realities. So maybe there's something going on that's really chaotic and messy, and they can sugarcoat it just to appease their desire for order and peace. Or they may sugarcoat it, telling it to someone else like, oh, it's not that bad, when really it's pretty bad. So that can be a downside to that aspect. Next, we have Mercury conjunct Venus. So they carry the beauty of conveying speech and thought into action. They have the natural ability to work well with others and implement beauty into what they want to convey to others. This is a strong placement for business and entrepreneurship. People will find that they are refined, elegant, and even mesmerizing. I get that about him. I mean, look at how many fans he has. Like, people are mesmerized by him doing the simplest thing. Like, people are mesmerized by him riding in a car. People are mesmerized by him making coffee. People are mesmerized by him just sitting there, sitting. And people are like, wow, I could stare at him for hours. Like, whatever he does it, and people are captivated by that. And he doesn't even have to try hard. That's the thing about this aspect, is that he doesn't even have to try to get their attention. He doesn't have to try to, like, say, hey, look at me over here. He just is. He exists, and people are mesmerized by him. So next we have Sun conjunct Jupiter. So these people have larger than life personalities. To the world, they can come off as extravagant or over the top. I don't really get that from him, but like I said, this is not 100% for every Sun conjunct Jupiter. Everything in your life is over magnified by your passion and is conveyed to others in such large extremities that it's hard to go unnoticed with the presence you carry. It makes you an outgoing, optimistic, generous, and very lucky person. Your moral code, religion, philosophy, or spiritual outlook is an important part of your life. You can be very prosperous while also being modest. A love of learning and long-distance travel makes you liberal, tolerant, and broad-minded, as well as wise. And I definitely see that with him. I see the whole, starting from your moral code and on, that sounds like it describes him to a T. Next we have Saturn conjunct Pluto. So again, I'd mentioned this when I was talking about his moon. Anytime I mention something about maybe his upbringing, his parents, or whatever, just keep in mind that I am not saying this as a fact, and that this is just in the description of Saturn, or in, this aspect, or whatever planet, or whatever. Like, these things are not 100%, so I just wanted to remind you all of that. So Saturn conjunct Pluto. You can have hardships at an early age. Your parents may have been poor, or one of them may have been very strict, even mean to you. Even if you come from a wealthy family, it is likely you experienced some kind of restriction when you were young that shaped your character. And that I do kind of see, not necessarily in a bad way, like restriction comes in with such a negative connotation. To me, restriction kind of comes across as like they were protecting him. He came from a very wealthy family. He was going to be in the public eye, so maybe his parents kind of restricted him from certain things for his protection. So I can see that part as, possibly factual. They had to grow up very quickly, and I kind of see that too. When you are in the public eye, when your family's famous, when your family's political, when your family, especially families with a lot of money, I notice those children tend to grow up quicker. So I can kind of see that. It's not necessarily a good thing, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is. It just seems to be very common in those families. Saturn conjunct Pluto is marked achievements are likely, and you hold a position of authority or leadership. I mean, he is the crown prince. You work very well in a career that has a defined structure and hierarchy, like government agencies or large corporations. Next, we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter. And this gives us a wide knowledge and broad outlook on life. They can be generally happy and successful in life with a love of learning, travel, and talking with people. People love the way you communicate. I go back to that again. Like if he was teaching a statistics class, I would be listening and I would love listening to it. These skills would make or would even make a good diplomat or negotiator. You can settle disputes between competitors and bring conflicts to an end. Your warm and generous words can have a soothing effect, and you may even have healing hands. So maybe he would have been a great doctor. You should also have a good sense of humor. I kind of see that about him. Just from what he would share, he seems to like to play pranks on people, and he'd laugh and joke. And I don't speak Arabic, but I'm sure whatever he was saying was funny. So I can definitely see that about him. Mercury conjunct Jupiter is about the best aspect for travel. Here we go with traveling again. With Mercury ruling short trips and Jupiter ruling long-distance travel for foreign countries. You appreciate cultures different from your own and may well be attracted to people from different ethnic or cultural groups. Personal growth and satisfaction can be gained not only from overseas travel, but also through inner spiritual journeys as well. So maybe since he hasn't been able to travel right now, maybe he could find some inner peace through spiritual journeys. Just a hint. Now, Moon conjunct Saturn. And again, this is kind of another one where I'm like, don't take this as fact. I know a lot of the things that I have been saying, they may ring a bell to you and be like, oh my God, yeah, that is true. But again, I just want you to know that not everything is 100% fact. So with Moon conjunct Saturn, burdens the emotional life with hardships, sadness, and guilt. This aspect can be made more difficult if either parent, especially the mother, was cold or mean towards you while you were very young. Building up a feeling of emotional security is most important because you do have a tremendous urge to feel the need or to feel needed and valued. In your adult life, this can result in very objective or unemotional responses and reactions in your personal relationships. Overcoming shyness and a lack of self-respect should be seen as major life goals. Through positive reinforcement and leaving your comfort zone to open up to others, you can master the skills needed to maintain long-term intimate relationships. Showing others your deep emotions will turn isolation into companionship and depression into satisfaction. Next, we have Moon conjunct Pluto. And this gives an intense and dramatic emotional life. You feel things so deeply that it's sometimes hard to control how you react to people and situations. You also experience extremes in moods and a tendency towards serious and sometimes dark moods. Emotional manipulation is most likely at home when you were growing up and in intimate relationships, especially with women. So I hope that's not the case for him with emotional manipulation emotional manipulation with his relationships. That would really be sad. If your mother was prying, manipulative, or even overbearing, then you would have learned such controlling behavior. If so, undoing this subconscious brainwashing is a major priority and a necessary task before you can enjoy healthy relationships in life. Your emotions and reactions are also strongly influenced by your powerful intuition. Dreams or visions are often extremely vivid and profound. Next, we have, I guess this is the last one. Okay, last one. Venus conjunct Uranus. So with Venus conjunct Uranus, favorably influenced, the Venus-Uranus conjunction can bring exciting romances with enough personal freedom to enjoy a glamorous social life. Keeping an open mind and remaining flexible is key to bringing out the best of this aspect. Change is always a big part of your life, especially with love and money. Importantly, this is closely related to how you regard yourself or your level of self-love. So I kind of want to interject here for a second and say that, sometimes aspects show themselves at younger ages, and as we mature, we may not necessarily identify with those aspects. So maybe he had more of a glamorous social life. But right now, he seems to, he's had his little crew, and that's kind of who he hangs out with. But remember, he's so secretive that we may not know that he had this wild, crazy, glamorous social life. He could be socializing and chopping it up with his, with big groups of people. We may never know. I don't see that about him, but that's kind of what Venus conjunct Uranus kind of represents. And like I said, change is always a big part of your life, and that could be where change happens as well. And he's always kept his love life on silent. He wasn't necessarily allowed to date, especially publicly. Maybe he was allowed to date, but it had to be kept secretly. I highly doubt it. So we may not know if this fits him at all because we were never allowed to see that side of him. It's okay for you to fall in love at first sight, which I kind of see that about him. He comes across as one of those love at first sight people, and to go with your gut feeling in matters of love and finances. But then remember, he has to remember about those other aspects where he has to be careful with falling in love at first sight and too easily, because he can end up in a toxic relationship. Always be ready, however, to adapt to changing circumstances. This is important when you feel that your individuality and freedoms are threatened. So always be true to yourself. If you do want long-term commitment in love, then you will probably do best to find a partner who also values their own personal freedom as well. And like you, they may have something unusual about them, such as coming from a different culture or ethnic background, which he does love, and he appreciates other cultures and different backgrounds. So, that could be the perfect person for him. Something else with Venus conjunct Uranus is internet dating. It may suit them, and there may be some distance involved, which requires air travel. Or perhaps your social and love life can be stimulated by air travel. He does love to travel. And who knows, maybe he has different groups of friends or different people that he goes to visit because he seems to kind of visit the same cities and same countries sometimes. Maybe he has a crew in London that he doesn't necessarily have in Dubai or Vancouver or wherever else he travels more than once. So that could be big for him too. It has the distance, so he has to travel by air to see them. Other ways to keep up with excitement in relationships may be surprises and a high degree of kinkiness during sex. So here's that kinkiness that came up again. And I laugh only because it came up again. So I'm kind of leaning maybe towards he is kind of kinky in the bedroom, which, that's great for people that, may be into that. For those that are not into that, I'm sorry, but maybe you're not the right person for him. So if you love to experiment, you may be the girl for him, but he's married. So, but he can have more than one wife. That's right. Okay. This aspect is also known for producing a degree or genius in terms of creative talent. I get that from his photography. His photography is amazing. That's actually what I was drawn into when I first discovered him on Instagram. It wasn't his face, it wasn't him, it was his photography. He took a photo and I saw it pop up on Instagram and I was like, wow, that's like amazing, it's beautiful. And I went to his profile and it was actually before he was like really super popular. And I was just like mesmerized by like all of his photos. I was like, oh my God, this is beautiful, this is amazing. And then he had a picture of himself and I'm like, he's really attractive. And I'm like, of course he's attractive. And then when I started digging even more, I was like, and of course he's a crown prince. Like, of course this man is. Like, he's an amazing photographer. And then I discovered his poetry and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, can this man do no wrong? So I definitely see that about his creative talent. Whenever you put your hand to something as a hobby or professionally, you will develop your own unique style and you will need a certain amount of creative freedom in working in larger groups. While some may be shocked by your creative expression, at a deeper level, you aim to expose or enlighten through your progressive and futuristic vision. So I said this before about his Uranus trait, is that he wants to go against the grain. He wants to open the eyes of those that just want to go with society standards, which wants to go with tradition. There's nothing wrong with tradition, but sometimes, like I mentioned before, what goes for some may not go for all. And so he wants to show the world this side of it. Like, there's more than one side, there's more than one way of doing things, there's more than one way of living. So that's what I have for all of his conjunct signs. And before I end this video, I do want to say that if you're interested in getting your own astrological chart, you can go to www.astro.com, which I have the address right here in the corner. You can get your astrology chart here and it'll bring it up. And I also, when I was starting to learn astrology, I leaned heavily on astrologyking.com. That's where I got a lot of my information today about his aspects, because I wanted to get this done quickly, so I went and I looked those up. Astrologyking.com is like an encyclopedia. It's like a plethora of information. So that's a good place. And it's also accurate too. I don't want to bash any other astrology sites or apps or anything, but Astrology King is reliable. So is astro.net. So on that note, I will end. If you like this video, give it a like. If you have any comments or questions, let me know below. If you want more videos, please subscribe. And thank you for listening.